Hello students, hope you all are keeping safe. Hope you all are following the social distancing guidelines. So of course, because of the coronavirus outbreak, we will be having the rest of the semester online. And today, I'm going to talk about the situational theory of leadership. The situational theory of leadership is actually a very popular leadership theory, especially amongst leadership consultants, amongst practitioners. So the situational theory of leadership is one of the many contingency theories of leadership that we have. I have listed a couple here, which we will be going through in the semester. There are many others. I hope you understand what contingency theories are. The best way to understand contingency theories is to contrast them with the universalist theories of leadership. Universalist theories of leadership tell us that there is one best way to lead, or one best set of ways to lead. In contrast, the contingency theories tell us that there is no one best way to lead. What is best in one situation may not be best in another situation. So that's what the contingency theories tell us. Okay? The situational theory is one such contingency theory. Now, before we delve into the situational theory of leadership, let's quickly touch base upon the behavioral approach to leadership that we discussed 3 weeks ago, because this is going to help you understand and appreciate the situational theory of leadership better. So in the behavioral approach to leadership, we learned that the researchers at Ohio State University and Michigan University independently found that there are two sets of leadership behaviors that effective leaders engage in. They are the task behaviors and the relationship-oriented behaviors, right? The task behaviors were focused on accomplishing tasks. So leaders set goals for their employees, for their subordinates. They give them tasks. They set deadlines. They set standards. Those are the kinds of behaviors that went into task-oriented leadership behaviors. Then there were the relationship-oriented leadership behaviors that focused on building the quality of relationship with the subordinates. So this involved being friendly, being nice towards them, showing understanding, showing empathy, caring for them, and so on and so forth, right? Now, Blake and Mouton built on this research and proposed the Managerial Grid. They use slightly different terminology. They called the task-oriented leadership behaviors concern for production, and they called the relationship-oriented leadership behaviors concern for people. And they claimed that there was one best way of leading, and that was the team management. They called that the ideal style, which essentially meant engaging in a lot of task-oriented leadership behaviors and engaging in a lot of relationship-oriented leadership behaviors. All the other combinations, high task, low relationship, high relationship, low task, low relationship, or middle of the road, which is little bit of task, little bit of relationship-oriented behaviors. All these other combinations were considered not a good approach to leading. There was only one best way to lead. So this was a universalist approach of leadership. Now this brings us to the situational theory of leadership. The diagram that you see here looks very complicated, but it actually isn't. Once I explain it, it's going to be pretty simple and straightforward. So I've divided the diagram into two different parts. So let me go one part at a time. First, the top part. So in here, you see there are two dimensions: directive behavior and supportive leadership behavior, referring to the exact same leadership behaviors that we had discussed before. They just use different terminology. Directive behavior refers to task-oriented leadership behavior, and supportive behavior is nothing but relationship-oriented leadership behaviors. So So high task, high relationship would be the coaching style. High task and high relationship. Then we have high task, low relationship. That is directing leadership style. We have supporting leadership, which is high relationship but low amounts of task leadership behaviors. And finally, we have delegating, which is low task and low relationship oriented behaviors. So these four possible combinations. And this is the contrarian stand that Hersey and Blanchard are taking. They are saying that it is not just coaching which is the best way to lead, high task, high relationship, but even directing, supporting, and delegating, the other combinations, even they can be great ways to lead the employees. They can be exceptionally effective ways of leading. Now, whether or not these styles of leading is going to be effective is dependent upon certain factors. And what are those factors? Just two actually: competency and commitment levels of the employees. Competency refers to the ability and the skill level of the employees concerned in whatever project that they are working on, whatever task that they are engaged in. What is their competency level? What is their skill level? That's what we are referring to when we are talking about the dimension of competency. And what do we mean by commitment? We essentially mean motivation. This can be a little bit confusing because there is the term called organizational commitment in our literature, which means something very different. But here in Hersey and Blanchard's model, commitment refers to motivational levels of the employees. So how motivated is the employee to getting the task done, to work hard on that project? How motivated is the person to persist? That's what we are referring to when we are referring to the word commitment here. So these are the two dimensions. So based on these two dimensions, we will have different levels of followers. Certain followers will be highly developed. They will be the what? Highly competent and highly committed people, most desirable followers, right? Most desirable employees in our organization, in any organization. And the least preferred option would be the employees or the subordinates who are neither competent nor committed. So they are incompetent and not motivated. But Hersey and Blanchard take a slightly different perspective. They do recognize that the most developed employee is the one who is high on both competency as well as commitment, highly skilled, able, and also highly motivated, right? But the least developed employee or the least developed subordinate is not somebody who is low on both competency and commitment. Rather, he is a person who has high commitment. So D1 is the least developed employee or least developed follower. This person has low competency, doesn't have much ability or skill in the particular task or the particular project that the person is working on. But the person is highly committed, highly motivated. Now this may seem unusual, but it actually isn't. Because any time that you are starting a new project, any time that you are starting anything new, any new task, typically we see high levels of motivation. Imagine when you were learning to ride the bicycle for the first time. You were super excited. You couldn't wait to just take the bicycle out. So you are highly motivated, but your competency level in bicycle riding was really low. So you will be falling and not being able to keep balance. So your competency level was low, but you are highly motivated. Same thing happens with any task. You are learning to play the guitar for the first time. You are super excited to try it. You will go and purchase the most expensive guitar from the market, and you are trying to strum and whatever learn the guitar. So The motivation level typically is extremely high anytime that you are starting a new project. Your ability level, your skill level though is low. So that is the least developed employee or the least developed follower that you may have. Enthusiastic beginner is what they are called. Now for these followers, what Hersey and Blanchard are referring to, are recommending is that you follow a directing approach to leadership. Because they have low competency, they need a lot of direction. You need to tell them, this is what you do, this is how you do. You need to set clear standards for them so that, and some of those standards probably should not be too high. They should be relatively easy standards that they can accomplish. But because of their low competency, what is recommended is that you follow a very task-oriented approach, which is the directive style. You don't have to engage in much of relationship-oriented behaviors because they are already motivated. That's the basic idea. But they need a lot of task-oriented leadership behaviors to provide them with the guidance that they need to be able to gain in skill, to be able to gain in competency. So the second least developed category of followers that we have in Hersey and Blanchard's model are called the disillusioned learners, the D2 category of followers. They are pretty low on competence. They have developed some amount of ability, some amount of skill in their project or in the task that they're working on, but not a whole lot. But they have very low motivation, so their commitment is really low. That's a major contrast between D2 category, D1 category of followers and D2 category of followers. The D1 category of followers, the enthusiastic beginners, had high levels of commitment, high motivation. But D2 category of followers, they have really low motivation. Now, why do we see this major change? Again, primarily because the motivational levels are high, that initial enthusiasm is high when you're starting out a project. But that doesn't stay for long enough. Typically, that initial enthusiasm wears off pretty fast. Now, how fast that may vary. Sometimes it may last few weeks, sometimes few months. It will depend on the nature of the project that you're working on. But it typically wears off. Especially after you have been working on that task or that project for some amount of time, you realize how difficult the task is. You may realize that the initial expectations that you had with respect to how quickly you will be able to master that task was unfounded. You realize that it's going to take a lot more effort. So you may start getting demotivated then. And it's a very common phenomenon. That is the reason, many people give up on the different projects that they take up. Like for instance, during New Year's, people make these New Year's resolutions. They start out with a lot of enthusiasm, but after a few weeks, or for some people after a month, they don't have that high level of enthusiasm anymore. They give up on those projects. Their motivational levels are really low. So that's what we refer to as the D2 category of followers, disillusioned learner. Now, how do you lead or how do you deal with these D2 category of followers? What is recommended is that you follow the S2 style or the coaching style, which is nothing but high task and high relationship oriented leadership behaviors. So what is recommended is that you engage in a lot of task behaviors with them. And why? Why a lot of task behaviors? Because they still haven't developed a lot of ability and skill in the area. So they need that guidance. They need that direction from the leader. But that is not enough. We also have to engage in a lot of relationship-oriented behaviors with these subordinates, with these followers, because their motivational levels are low. So the leader needs to make an effort to listen to them, to understand them, to understand their emotional state, to support them so that they don't give up as easily, right? So we need to understand their emotional state. We need to be empathetic towards them. We need to care for them. So both high task as well as high relationship, both are needed to succeed with the D2 category of followers. Now, the next category of followers described by Hersey and Blanchard are the D3 category of followers, better known as the capable but cautious performers. Now, these followers have developed sufficient amount of competence. So they have moderate to high competence. They have now developed the skill necessary for them to be able to do a job well. But their commitment, their motivational levels are variable. In other words, they are not consistent. Sometimes they seem to be motivated and at other times not so motivated. So that's what we mean by variable commitment. Fairly large percentage of employees fall into this category, into the D3 category, especially those employees who have been in the organization for a while, or those employees who have been working on a project for a while fall into this category of followers. They have, by virtue of having worked in the project or having worked in the organization for sufficient amount of time, they now know how to do the job. But their motivational levels are not always high. Sometimes they work hard, but at other times not so much. So how do you deal, or how do you lead such employees so that their motivational levels stays consistently high? What is recommended by Hersey and Blanchard is the supporting style, the S3 or the supporting style, which is nothing but low task and high relationship behavior, or in other words, low directive and high supportive behavior. Now, why low task or why low directive behavior? Because they are already competent now. They have developed enough competence to be able to do their jobs well. So they do not lack in a big way when it comes to skills and abilities. They have become competent on their jobs. So the leader does not have to guide them as much as the leader had to for the D1 and D2 category of followers. But these followers, they still need a lot of supportive behavior. Why? Because of their varying motivational levels. The leader needs to understand why their motivational levels are fluctuating so much. And the leader can understand that by focusing on the follower, by trying to understand the needs of the follower. Maybe there is something in the environment. It could be a colleague, could be certain problems with resources, could be even family life, it could be anything that temporarily disrupts the motivation of the employee. Okay, so by taking the effort, by putting the effort to understand the employee's needs, socio-emotional needs, the leader then helps the employee. The employee now feels like, he or she is being taken care of and now is more motivated to work hard. So that is the supporting style. The last category of followers are the D4 category of followers. They are also called as the self-reliant achiever. These followers are highly competent and highly committed, or in other words, they're extremely competent. They have the necessary abilities and skills to get the job done. And they are also highly motivated. So they don't have to be told to do things. They are already self-motivated individuals. So for these followers, the self-reliant achievers, what is recommended is the S4 style of leading, or in other words, delegating, which is nothing but low task, low relationship oriented behaviors. And you can understand why. They are already competent, so that's the reason you don't need to give them any direction. They know their stuff. And they are already motivated too. They are consistently staying motivated on their jobs. So they don't need a lot of supportive behavior either. You just tell them what needs to be done and they will get it done. So that is the delegating style. You delegate jobs to them and they get it done. You don't have to either worry about, monitoring their jobs. You don't have to worry too much about being supportive, being socio-emotionally supportive towards them. They get the job done. That is the delegating style. That was the end of the situational theory of leadership. Few things we need to understand before we wrap up this theory is how does it work in practical life, in real life. It's a two-step process. First of all, we need to diagnose the situation. In other words, we need to figure out what developmental level our follower is in. So different followers may be at different developmental levels. We need to diagnose that. So a certain follower may be at D1 level, another follower may be at D3 level, and so on and so forth. Even a follower who is at D1 level for task A may be at D3 level in task B. Okay, so even the developmental level of the followers may vary based on the different projects, right? So we need to figure out the developmental level of the followers first, and then accordingly adapt our leadership style. So that's what is going to make us effective when it comes to leading different followers. So it's a great theory. It has a lot of intuitive appeal. That is the reason it is very popular amongst the leadership consultants. It's one of the most common approaches used by leadership consultants because it makes a lot of practical sense, and it makes a prescription, right? Follow it. It makes a prescription about how you should be leading different types of people. So it has a lot of appeal in the marketplace and provides a lot of flexibility. So it's not just saying that this is just one way that you should be leading, because real life is much more complex. So it does take into account some of that complexity, and it tells you how to adapt or how to modify your style to deal with different types of employees, to deal with different types of followers. But the theory also has its set of criticisms. The biggest criticism is that it has poor empirical support. First of all, not many empirical studies that have been done on this theory. Few doctoral dissertations, but not many peer-reviewed journal articles on the situational theory of leadership. And the ones that are available, again, do not show consistent support in favor of this theory. And there are numerous reasons that why this is happening. For instance, if we take a look at the developmental level of followers here, one can easily confuse a D2 follower with a D3 follower, for instance, and vice versa, right? When does some competence become moderate competence? When does moderate competence become some competence? We don't know, because these are subjective terms. There is no clear demarcation to classify some competence from moderate competence. If it is some competence, it will become disillusioned learner. Moderate competence, you may classify the person as a D3 or a capable but cautious performer, right? So it can be a little bit ambiguous. And if you misclassify a person, then obviously you will then not be using the right approach, right leadership style with the person, and consequently then you will not be effective. So these are some of the criticisms against the theory. Nonetheless, it's a very interesting theory, very intuitive theory. That is the reason it has so much of appeal in the marketplace. And that is the reason we need to learn this theory. Thank you.